Today, I'm looking for a murder. And when I say a murder, I don't mean that I'm looking to commit a murder. I'm on the trail of one, but not a murder that actually happened. A fictional murder in a book by a gentleman called John Bude, written, I think, or published anyway, in about 1936, in a novel called The Sussex Downs Murder. I read it fairly recently. Actually, one of my viewers had sent it to me. It's been on my shelf for a long time, and I eventually got round to reading it. And it's a good old 1930s murder yarn in the guise of that golden age of murders and things in Britain. And it all takes place very local to me. It starts where I am, pretty much, at a place called Washington. The chalk pits here, which I'm going down to try and have a look at. There was a house in the book called Chalklands. Two brothers owned this house, and they worked the chalk pits and the lime kilns, and their business was to take chalk and turn it into lime. Well, it seems that one of the brothers gets murdered. His body is chopped up and fed into the lime kiln, and only the bones remain, and it's from that the detective has to follow the case. It takes him all round Findon, Washington, to Bramber, and even over to Shoreham. And he is a inspector called Meredith, who is looking out the case. It's a fascinating thing, and when you read the book you realise, hey, I know all these places, it's so familiar. So that's what I'm doing today. So I've got to first of all try and find the lime kilns. What I like about this is it's not real. It's completely in the head of the author, John Bude, whose real name, I think, was Ernest Elmer. I may have got that wrong, and if I have, I'll shove it on the screen. I was only reading the little introduction to the book this morning, and of course I've come out with all the facts. But what I like is that this is completely made up, but the author must have spent some time pacing around, cycling, walking, or even driving in the early 30s, this area, because he's known for his research, and he's done a few of these murders in different places. So he must have known up here there really was a chalk pit. There really is a house that must have worked the chalk pit, but it's not the name of the house now. And old maps, it's changed its name. It was something like Elbourne, and now, or rather, it's now known as Elbourne as far as I know, but on old maps it's Ebbourne instead of Ebb. Fascinating. So whether it just changed its name, who knows. But he has a house called Chalklands, which makes a lot of sense. It's up on the South Downs. I'm just above Washington, in between Washington and Findon, and to my right, to the west of me, is the very busy, and you can probably hear it, the A24. You can't really see it, luckily it's masked by some trees, but it's just down the slope there. That wouldn't have been there. There would, of course, have been the old A24, the old Worthing to London road, which passes a little bit between me, where I'm on this lane here, and the busy A24, and it's very rarely used, but you can drive up from Washington on it. So fascinating in itself that This is well before the 60s when the big bypass came in. Now, I think to my right is where the chalk pit is, and I think that somewhere the lime kilns are located. Whether I can access them, I don't know. Well, I'm guessing that this is the entrance to the chalk pit here, these old doors, and much of the story evolves around what happens not so much in the chalk pit itself, but at the lime kilns, but in this sort of whole area. So it's fascinating to actually see it. I suppose I'm stepping more into the footsteps of the author rather than the characters, because the characters obviously never actually were here in reality. But as somebody who has written some children's books, nothing major or anything, or just on Amazon, it's fascinating to get into the mindset of an author as he's plotting his story. And it's 80 odd years ago, 90 years ago, 70 years ago, 30s, yeah, something like that anyway, that it all took place. Just before I started filming, I met up with John. He's my log man, and he's up on the Whiston estate, and he supplies the logs from the ash dieback for my Essie, and it's great from my point of view because I'm able to buy logs and put. Sorry, there's a car just whizzing by there. I'm able to put my money into the local community for my heating and warming up the house, washing my clothes, drying my clothes, cooking my dinner and all of that through logs, which is just fantastic for me. And he's just based up the road here. Oh, hang on, I'm being spoken to. A curious man. Hello.
I'm curious what you're filming.
I'm filming myself on a walk.
Oh, that's right.
Hang on one moment. Well, that was a gentleman in his car, as you may have just gathered there. He was curious about what I was up to. And it can look very peculiar, a man with a camera and a tripod running around filming bits in a strange way. And of course, houses out here are always concerned about their privacy and who might be staking them out. But I put him at ease when I told him about the book, and he said yes, he'd heard of it actually, and not surprisingly, because I imagine in this area most people will possibly have known about this book from 1936. Anyway, I was talking about John, my woodman, and actually the gentleman I spoke to just now also knew him, and I said, it's all about giving your credentials really and putting people at ease, isn't it? But going back to John, what I was trying to get to is that he only lives over the way really, and he was telling me exactly where the lime kilns were, so hopefully I can find them. And I just asked this chap here if it was okay to go and have a look, and he said yes, but be careful, they're not safe. So we will be careful, assuming we can find them. I don't want to give too much of the story away because it is a great read, and I don't want to do a spoiler. But the principal part of the story is here. It all evolves around the murdered body having been chopped up. It is then placed in the lime kiln and only the bones remain. They get sifted out in the lime that is on building sites around Sussex. Now, I should explain that the lime is made from chalk, and it's a process in which you heat up chalk and it turns into lime, which is used for building and was very important in the past, in Victorian times, in Georgian times, and of course I guess in the 30s when this book was being written. There would have been lime kilns, and there still are, the remains of them are all over the place. It's fascinating to get up close. I did actually come here once before, about, I don't know, 15 years ago. Made a podcast here. But this is the first time I've been here as the Bald Explorer. I don't want to get too close because, as the gentleman said, they aren't particularly safe. But yes, in the dead of night, now I need to be careful how I say this because it's in the story, but murder accomplice, I think I'm allowed to say, comes here and places the bones of the deceased. I'm not quite sure how that works. He just does describe it in the book, but the chalk is pushed at the top and the fires are down here at the bottom, and then in the lime is taken out, and would have been taken out by horse and cart, of course. But it's just fascinating to see these lime kilns still in existence, albeit overgrown and almost undetectable from the footpath. This is what I love about England, and why I'm in search of England. Not only the landscape, the heritage and the nature, but also actually some of the fiction. Everywhere you go, there's something, there's layers upon layers of history, and every square inch has a story to tell one way or another. And here, an old industry of lime making, which would have been very busy, very hot, the furnaces going day and night, people coming and going, even authors looking and making notes for a murder on the Sussex Downs. And what the lime kiln owners and indeed the operators would have thought about a murder going on here, I don't know. But speaking to John, and I told him what I was about to do and the adventure I was going to have looking at these, and telling him about how the limbs had been put through and only the bones were left. He said, no, the temperatures would have been far too high. The bones would have just been burnt. They would have disintegrated, turned to dust. You wouldn't have actually have seen them. I guess John Bude may have known that when he wrote the story, but he presumably hoped that the reader didn't. Back at the van, and I have the book here, the Sussex Downs Murder, John Bude. He died at 56 years of age, and it seems that he was just beginning to get into his prime as he wrote these stories, and it would have been fascinating really to see how he had developed. So I'm interested to see if I can get hold of a couple more of his stories and see where else he's set them. It's a beautiful period of time, the 1930s, to set things. Obviously you had a lot of the Great Depression and stuff going on. People didn't have a lot of money, and then you had the other lot, the wealthy, who had a lot of money, and businesses who were employing people of different grades. And of course for me it goes back to the time when we had a cohesive England, an England in which communities were very tight-knit, The farmers were local. I've made videos in which I'm worried that we've lost our way, that we have embraced too much of this globalization and outsourced so much of our farming, our food production, as well as other manufacturing. We used to do most of it in-house, as it were. And this is a time, really, I think, of that. And also great art, great designs. He talks about the old Hillman, I think it was a Hillman 400. Now, I don't know what that looks like. I have to see if I can look that up and get a picture. But it's a lovely period of nostalgia to go back to, in those innocent days when we didn't have DNA for the murder investigation, we didn't have mobile phones. Things were checked out very much by a policeman on his beat, plodding about from pillar to post. Fantastic. The kettle sounds like it's about to boil, so I'm going to enjoy a cup of coffee. As I mentioned before, the action in the book takes place all around the area, Worthing, Bramber, even in Lewes where the headquarters are. But so I'm not going around the whole area and following that. You'll enjoy it when you, if and when you read the book. So the last part of my little exploration here is to see if I can actually get a view of the chalk pit. Now, John said there's a footpath here which goes just off the South Downs Way, which is incredibly busy, and a lot of people walk those, but they rarely seem to walk the little footpaths off to the side, which I find is a shame, because these are far more interesting, I think, than just the South Downs Way itself. They wind around, you still get to see, whoops-a-daisy, you still get to see great views, and I'm hoping that somewhere on here on my left hand side I'm going to get a vantage down. Now, I might not. It might be that you have to sort of clamber over the fence a bit. I don't really want to do that because it's obviously private property. So there was a slight opening in the fence which I have taken advantage of. I'm not going to get right close to the edge, and of course this is incredibly dangerous and I don't recommend it. I just wanted to see this historic sand pit, chalk pit rather, for my own purpose. I'm, as I say, not going to get to the edge, but some terrific views here. It's amazing. This has been here over 100 years, possibly longer, and terrific views from it all round. It's an incredible thing, and at one point in time, no doubt, it will get refilled in landfill or something like that, and maybe a few houses built on here, little sort of holiday homes or some such thing. But that's part of the setting for this remarkable book. Right, well, that's it for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to follow, like and subscribe. Also, I'm on the lookout for some more interesting novels, possibly murder stories, based in Sussex, in West Sussex or East Sussex. If you know of any, particularly period ones, I'm not so much interested in the more recent ones which evoke a time of long ago. So, you know, 1920s, 30s and 40s would be my preferred one, but perhaps, you know, Victorian murder in Sussex, a novel that I can read and then perhaps go and explore some of the locations. That would be fantastic. Well, I'm going to get back to my van and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to become a patron. Help me put some diesel into the van. It's all gone up in price, I've noticed, so I can carry on making these videos. Till next time, bye-bye.